Analysis of Mind Boy by Peter Abrahams. 1. About the author. Peter Abrahams was born in Johannesburg, in South Africa. His collection of short stories, Dark Testament, in 1942 was followed by the publication of his first novel, Mind Boy, in 1946, which established Abrahams as an important novelist. He has since then published Song of the City, 1945, The Path of Thunder, 1948, Wild Conquest, 1950, A Leaf for Udomo, 1956, A Night of Their Own, 1965, This Island Now, 1966, The View from Koyaba, 1985, the autobiographical Tal Freedom, Memories of Africa, 1954, and an essay, Return to Gori, 1953. He attended St. Peter's College in South Africa in 1939, and then went to sea for 2 years as stoker during the war before settling in Britain. There he joined the editorial staff of the communist newspaper, The Daily Worker, and began to write in earnest. He became a regular contributor to The Observer, London, the Herald Tribune, New York, and Paris. Abrahams finally settled in Jamaica in 1957 with his wife and family, where he became editor of the West Indian Economist, a commentator on radio and television, and the radio news network controller of West Indian News. Number 2. The summary of chapters. Chapter 1. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. A man arrives in the town. He's Zuma. He sees a woman, Leah. She asks him where he comes from. He's from the north. He comes to look for a job. Leah leads Zuma in the house. There are 3 men and an old woman in the room. Maplang, the old woman, brings food for Zuma. Zuma gets to know Dala, a man who is fond of playing with a knife. Daddy, who is drunk, shows displeasure towards Leah. One man fears that Zuma comes from the police. The man is the brother of Leah's husband. Leah's husband is in jail for having killed a man who has kissed her. Zuma refuses to help Leah to sell illegal beer. He prefers to work in mines. Leah explains to Zuma the danger of working in mines. Finally, Leah shows Zuma where to sleep in a room of a teacher. Chapter 2. Zuma wakes up the next day and finds the house empty. Zuma goes outside. He finds Daddy dancing in the crowd of people. There are also 2 women who are fighting. Drunk Liz is fat, Lena is thin. Leah warns and chases the crowd. Leah takes the wounded woman at her home. After this, Leah prepares food for Zuma. They eat and Daddy comes to narrate the story of the city and the custom. Leah goes in the house and sees Joseph, the brother of Leah's husband. She asks him to go in the city with Zuma. The city is overcrowded because it is on Saturday. Suddenly, a pickup swerves. Policemen jump and run down the street. Joseph runs, but Zuma refuses to run. A policeman gets near and beats Zuma, who claims that he has done nothing. He strikes the policeman in the face repeatedly till the policeman collapses. Finally, Zuma runs when other 2 policemen come closer. One colored man bars his way, but surprisingly, another one knocks the first one down and runs down the street, waving Zuma to follow him. He follows him. At home, there is a black woman who's his wife. She expresses her disappointment at Zuma for striking the policeman. Zuma requests to leave, but the woman cautions that it is not safe. Chapter 3. Zuma comes out and finds the street full of trouble, but it is difficult for him to arrive at Leah's home. He sees the fat drunk Liz, but she refuses to show him the way home. Afterwards, Zuma sees Daddy, who promises him to read him at home if only he can buy a drink. Leah and Joseph are happy to see Zuma. After 10 minutes, a black policeman on a cycle comes down and stops. Leah smiles and counts a £5 note from her leather bag and gives it to the policeman. Leah introduces Zuma to the girl at home. She's Eliza. Zuma helps Eliza to lift up a sewing machine. She gives him a cigarette and looks at his face and laughs. Eliza and Zuma go for a walk. Zuma sees mine dumps and shifts his eyes from the mine dumps to Eliza and longs for her. All that night, people drink at Leah's place. Zuma and Eliza return and see more people crowded at Leah's home. Dradra attacks Zuma with a knife, accusing him of stealing his woman, gives him a cut on his face. Eliza takes Zuma into a room and washes his bloody face. They return and find a doctor who fixes Zuma's face. Johannes promises Zuma to find a job for him in mines. Chapter 4. The streets are empty after being crowded on Saturday. Zuma and Johannes walk up and down in empty streets. They live in mines. For Zuma, the day is strange. Zuma is frightened when the whistle blows for the workers to stop work for food. One of them is called Nana. He asks Zuma to eat with him. He divides his food and gives Zuma a half. When they have finished, Nana stretches himself full length on the ground and sleeps. The men who have gone underground that morning come up. Zuma watches them coming and shading their eyes against the light. Johannes calls Zuma and takes him to the mine doctor. Zuma lays on the long table. The doctor examines him while Chris and Paddy watch. Then Johannes leads Zuma to the washing place for the mine boys. He pushes a few men out of the way and the men make place for them. Zuma and Johannes, they go in and wash and set off for Malay camp. Chapter 5. When they get to Leah's place, a group of women are just leaving and Leah is at the gate watching them go. Leah welcomes them. Johannes goes inside the house, leaving Zuma and Leah outside to talk. Leah tells Zuma about life in the city. She says, to live in the city, you must be hard and money must be your friend. There is a long silence between them. Rosita, who lives across the way, turns on her gramophone and comes on her veranda. Leah and Zuma get into the house. Zuma is offered food, finishes eating, and leaves the room. He feels dissatisfied and unhappy. Zuma goes on the veranda and watches the streets. Mace comes out and joins him. Zuma and Mace join the ring. When they get home, Zuma sits on his bed. He thinks about Eliza for a while. He blows out a candle and sits in the darkness. As soon as he lights his cigarette, there is a knock at the door. He responds and it is Eliza's voice. Zuma wants to sleep with her, but she refuses. She explains that she's black, but inside she's a white people's fanatic. Chapter 6. Zuma has left Leah's place and lives in a room in Malay camp for some months. Eliza is now like a devil in Zuma's blood. He needs to go at Leah, but fears to see Eliza. It is Saturday night, and in spite of the cold, the streets are crowded. In Johannesburg, there are more white people. Zuma does not give attention to what they say because they are not his people. The streets are overcrowded. The only place in which Zuma can be free is underground in the mines. There, he is a master and knows the way. Zuma meets Paddy. Paddy invites him to visit him. Paddy and his wife receive Zuma. They drink wine and eat some food. Paddy and Zuma talk about mines. After leaving their home, Zuma goes back to Malay camp. Paddy and Dee argue about Zuma. Dee says that black people are like animals, but Eliza is a social animal since she loves white people. Zuma leaves Paddy's home and meets a crowd of people. There is a man who's being chased by the police. He falls down. The doctor helps the wounded man. As Zuma and Dr. Mini get in the other room, the wounded man escapes because he fears the police. Emily reports it, and Zuma goes away with shame. Chapter 7. Zuma in Malay camp is alone. We see the busy streets in Malay camp. He decides to go at Leah's home. Eliza narrates the story of Zulu War. This chapter starts when Zuma is cold and does not go back to his room because the weather is so cold. He thinks of the life in Malay camp. Small houses are around the dark streets. Some people shout, others fight. Zuma remembers the situation at Leah's home in Johannesburg. He suddenly goes there. When he arrives there, it looks like there has been no one. After knocking many times, Zuma gets in. As Ma Plank opens the door, Daddy is in deep drunken sleep. Zuma converses with Leah. He asks her about Eliza. Eliza? Eliza, Mace, and Joseph have gone. They also talk about the situation in mines in Malay camp. Zuma is loved and appreciated in mines. Ma Plank goes on talking about Daddy's background. Daddy used to be a serious man that everyone respected. When Eliza and Mace come back, Zuma becomes very glad. Ma Plank is busy preparing tea. When Zuma disagrees with Eliza and Mace, he hurries away without saying goodbye to Leah. Leah follows him and tells him that Joseph is in jail. She's suspicious of some neighbors who might be betraying her to the police. Zuma and Leah come back. Leah, Mace, and Marplan go to bed, except Eliza, who is reading a book about Zulu War. Eventually, Eliza and Zuma go to sleep together, and both of them speak lovely words to each other. Eliza explains to Zuma that she loves him. However, she says that she has something in her that pushes her to love white people. Chapter 8. This chapter begins when Zuma wakes up slowly from his deep, peaceful sleep. Ma Plank sees him and gives him some coffee prepared by Mace. Zuma asks Mace where other people are. She replies that Eliza is in the room. Leah has gone to find out who is betraying them. Zuma goes to Eliza's door and knocks, but there is no reply. He goes in and Eliza tells him not to touch her. Zuma goes out and Mace follows him. Maplan calls them because food is ready. Leah is back and hasn't found the betrayer. At once, the front door bangs. Eliza is hurrying down the street. Zuma calls her, but she keeps on moving. The joy of the night turns into bitterness in him, and Mace tells him to go with her and that will help him to forget. Zuma puts on his hat and his coat and goes with Mace in Hoopville. The bus to Hoopville is closed, but they find a room at the back. Mace, who is sleeping on Zuma, wakes up after 2 hours and says they are near the place. She takes his hand and leads him along a footpath. Below them, the Hope Valley can be seen in Hoopville. There is a cluster of houses and a few streets, and behind them there is a river. Zuma is happy to see Mace dancing as they have done the previous night. Zuma once again thinks about Eliza. He says that if it were Eliza, it would be better. A cool breeze blows Mace's dress and her body parts are clear. Zuma says that she's good. Mace asks Zuma why he thinks about Eliza. Zuma replies that it is not so. They arrive near the little township of colored people. On the other side of the river, they see a farm and suggest to go there. In the farm, they are given beer, and all the time Mace is close to Zuma. He has forgotten all people and all things connected to the city. Many people come and make a ring. Women bring beer and food. After a moment, they begin to dance. Zuma and Mace find the last taxi, and through 1 hour they reach Johannesburg. Zuma is very drunk, so he goes to pass the night at Mace's home. In Mace's room, everything moves. Mace tells Zuma to go to bed, and Zuma falls asleep. Mace makes a bed for herself on the floor. For a while, she stands looking at him. Then she turns out the light. Chapter 9. This chapter begins when Mace tells Zuma to wake up because it is time to go to work. Zuma dresses and studies the nice woman's room. He's given the breakfast and goes to work. Mace shows him the passage that leads to Malay camp. He goes to his home to put on work clothes. At the mine gate, he meets Johannes, who is still drunk. He tells Zuma that his wife Lena is in jail because she has been drunk and noisy. Zuma tells him not to worry. They have to help him to find money and get her out. Johannes walks a little, then stops and comes back. He tells Zuma that he has seen Daradara with a lot of money. He was drunk and boastful. He tells Zuma that Daradara is the betrayer of Leah. The chapter continues as Zuma goes underground to work in mines. Afterwards, Zuma finds a man who shows signs of tuberculosis. The man does not want to go to the doctor since he has a big debt to pay the white man. Finally, Zuma and Paddy tell the man that every worker has free medical insurance. He goes for medication. After work, Zuma goes at Mace's home. He stays there for a while and remembers Daradara, so he has to go to tell Leah. Mace expresses her feeling of love to Zuma. Zuma says that he loves Mace, but Eliza is like a devil in his blood. Mace advises Zuma to sleep and rest so that he will not be tired tonight. Mace touches his forehead with cool, soothing fingers. They linger there for a second, or so. Then she pulls them away. Go to sleep, she says. Then she goes out, shutting the door behind her. Chapter 10. This chapter starts when Zuma and Mace walk through the street on their way to Malay camp. It is dusk on a winter evening. They go to warn Leah about the betrayal. The latter, instead of thinking about Mace, Zuma thinks about Eliza. Mace feels jealous. Zuma and Mace arrive at Leah's home. Leah is alone and drunk. Leah is boastful. Leah invites everyone to the party. Zuma and Eliza talk about their love. When food is ready, Mace calls them to enter the house. After eating, the party goes on. Leah is still planning how to deal with the betrayal in the few coming days. Zuma and Eliza linger over their food. Leah asks Eliza if she feels happy. She replies that it is so. Leah tells Zuma to go on to dance with Mace. When they finish the dancing, Eliza comes out and reminds Zuma that it's time to go to work. The music stops. Eliza drags Zuma to a corner and makes him rest his head on her lap. The old woman gives Eliza some food. Then Eliza feeds Zuma. Zuma tells Eliza his background and life in the north. He wants that one day they will go together to visit his family. Eventually, Eliza accompanies Zuma, who is going to work in the mines. Afterwards, she returns and makes her way back to Malay camp. Chapter 11. This chapter starts when Zuma hears a voice that is like a singing bird in his ears. That is Eliza, who has woken up before in order to prepare a breakfast for Zuma. It is hard for him to believe that it is Eliza who has come in his room and cooked his food. Zuma was surprised. Eliza asks Zuma if he has never known other women. Zuma replies that he has known them but he has not loved them. Zuma also asks her about her past love. She says that she used to know only one man. She insists that she did not love him like Zuma. Maplan comes to Zuma's home to report that Daradara was found dead. Leah wants Zuma and Eliza to go at her home. When they arrive, Leah asks everyone if they are not responsible for killing Daradara. Meanwhile, the police come. The police are doing investigation. Zuma prefers to go with Leah at the police station, but is not possible. Leah wants Zuma to stay with Eliza, Mace, and others who are in trouble. The foremost policeman is nicknamed the Fox. The police van moves off. Afterwards, Leah returns. Everyone treats her as though she comes from a long journey. And people dance outside the house, and soon it develops into a party. Everyone wonders who has killed Daradara, but is never discovered who has killed Daradara. Chapter 12. Twilight gathers first. Zuma and Eliza stroll home through the gathering dusk. It has been so for 5 days. They have loved and have been together all the time, and it has been good. Other times they go at Leah's after food and they help with setting. Life is good. Eliza does not like night shifts because they make her sleep alone every night. When they arrive at home, the woman who lives next door tells them that someone has been looking for them. It is Ma Plank. They hurry down the street. As they arrive at Leah's home, they learn that Daddy was knocked down by a car. Dr. Mini is called for assistance. The doctor says that Daddy is damaged inside, so he has no chance to survive. After all, Daddy dies. They arrange the funeral. That is, names are Francis and Davura. After the funeral, there is a ceremony at Leah's. Zuma and Eliza stroll up the street away from Malay camp, away from Vredodorp, into the heart of the city, and past even that Eliza wants Zuma to be happy. She also wants him to let that night work. She needs him close to her. She craves for his love. When Zuma says that it is time to go, Eliza pleads that she needs him right there. He cannot resist her fingers and her eyes and the strange, inviting smile of her lips. They make love. Chapter 13. The chapter starts when Zuma wakes up and calls Eliza. She does not respond because she's not there. Malplank goes and tells Zuma that Eliza has gone away. Eliza has said that she will never come back again. Zuma cannot believe his ears. For him, it is impossible to live without Eliza. Malplank gives him food, but he eats mechanically without knowing or caring. Everything is impossible. Mace comes and asks him to go with her in Hope Village. Zuma does not want anyone or anything else. Leah comes and tries to talk to Zuma. Leah advises Zuma to go out to walk so as to become tired. Leah also regrets the absence of Eliza. She goes to the door. She wipes her tears away, pushes back her shoulders, and goes out. She walks down the street. Eliza has gone. Chapter 14. Eliza has gone. This is reality in Zuma's mind. He walks without knowing where he goes. He remembers how the night before he made love with Eliza. Now she's gone. He thinks about happy moments that they have had together. He gets to Malay camp. Everyone can see that he's in trouble. Afterwards, Zuma goes back at Leah's. Leah tells him to drink so that he can forget. Eliza Leah shows him where to sit. When Mace comes out and sees Zuma, Leah affirms that Mace loves Zuma. Johannes, who is drunk, wants to beat Zuma, but Leah hits him. Johannes cries like a baby. Johannes is very aggressive. After Leah receives the black policeman, who tells her that the police are not going to come tonight. The black policeman is Leah's spy. Zuma and Mice go for a walk. Mice does not want Zuma to talk about Eliza. After walking, Zuma and Mice go back at Leah's home. When they are still removing the tins of beer, the fox arrives there. Leah goes along with the policeman, the fox. Leah tells Mace to look after Malplank, who is growing old. Mace is supposed to stay with her. Zuma wants to accompany Leah, but she refuses. Zuma has many wonders. Daddy has died, Eliza has gone, and Leah is not there too. Chapter 15. Zuma thinks about Leah. She has been tried, and the white man has told her she must stay in jail for 9 months. Malplank and Mace have come in his room. They have tried to cheer him up, but he needs no cheering. Zuma meets Paddy. Paddy asks Zuma why he has a strange behavior. Zuma thinks that Paddy is a white man, that Paddy as a white man cannot understand him. Paddy insists that he understands Zuma's feelings. Zuma believes that black people and white people are totally different. Even says that he has to think like a black man. This chapter ends when Zuma imagines how the world can be beautiful if there were no black and no white. The country can be beautiful The world can be good too, full of laughter, full of friendliness, full of food, full of happiness. The good world. Chapter 16. Night has settled over Johannesburg when Zuma wakes. His room is in the darkness. Zuma is hungry, but he does not want to cook. So he goes in the nearest restaurant to buy food. When he arrives in a dirty restaurant, he thinks about big rooms and houses that are owned by white people. Zuma feels alone. He wants to talk to someone. Mice is the person he wants to talk to. Zuma tries to go at Mice's working place. He turns away and hurries back to Malay camp. When he gets there, it seems like something unusual has happened. There has been an accident. Johannes and Chris are down. Zuma and Paddy go down to rescue Chris and Johannes. Zuma steps out of the cage carrying the body of Johannes. He is followed by Paddy, who carries the body of Chris. After removing the dead bodies, the mine manager reminds the workers of the night shift to get ready to go down. Zuma says it can be better to fix up the place first. Paddy supports him. There is a strike. The police come in two pickup vans. Zuma runs away. Paddy calls Zuma to stop running. He cannot stop himself. Now he's near Mace's home. Mace opened the door. After drinking, Zuma tells Mace and Ma Plank what has happened. Zuma is supposed to go back to the police station because Paddy is in jail. Zuma declares his love for Mace and asks her to wait for him. He thinks that he can be put in jail. However, he has hope to be released soon. Mace promises Zuma to wait for him days and nights. Mace accompanies Zuma at the police station. Number 3. Themes in Mind Boy by Peter Abrams. 1. Racial discrimination, racial segregation, or racism. There are different reasons why one can say that there is racial discrimination in the novel Mind Boy by Peter Abrams. When we take an example in chapter 6, we see how Zuma cannot stay in the restaurant that is full of white people. After having a look, he suddenly goes away. The boss of Zuma wants friendship with him, but Zuma denies. He says that the black man and the white man cannot be friends. In this chapter, we have also realized how Zuma does not wish to stay with Dee, the wife of Paddy, because she's white. Moreover, when Paddy asks Dee her regard about Zuma, she says that Zuma is just a mind boy who is not yet a human being. Even if Paddy tries to convince her, she's not ready to accept that both black and white people are human beings. Dee calls Zuma an animal and Eliza a social animal because Eliza likes the lifestyles of white people. When Zuma is in Johannesburg, he's anxious because he has to step aside every time a white person passes by. When he arrives in Malay camp, he feels alright with his people. In chapter 8, when Mace and Zuma go to visit Hope Village, they say that is one of white man's ventures to get the natives and colors of the town. This is a proof of the bad ideology of white people who do not want to live together with native and coloreds. In chapter 15, we see that white men are allowed to sell beer and other drinks, but they are not taken to jail. This is another example of racial discrimination in the country because black people are not allowed to sell beer. In this chapter, the conversation between Paddy and Zuma reveals how white people in the country consider black people. Zuma insists that he's black first, but Paddy tells him that all human beings are the same. Paddy expresses the truth about what is going on in the country. Paddy says The white people in this country only think as white people, and that is why they do this harm to your people. Number two, there are different corruption. There are different examples of corruption in Mind Boy by Peter Abrahams. When we take an example, we remember that Leah gives a £5 note to a black policeman who works as a spy. He is the one to tell her about the operations of the police so that she can hide illegal beer cans. Moreover, when Zuma goes to work, he finds Lena in is in is in jail. Johannes asks Zuma to help him to collect money to give to the police. This is a form of corruption. When Zuma comes from the city, he finds some women at Leah. Leah accompanies them after collecting money to release their comrade. They collect money to give to the police. 3. Drunkenness. The theme of drunkenness is available in several parts of the novel Mind Boy by Peter Abrahams. Dad is always drunk. He does nothing except drinking and fighting. He's the husband of Ma Planck. Later, he's knocked down by a car when he's crossing the road. Leah is sometimes drunk. She sells legal beer and uses her home as a bar. The bar is always overcrowded with drunk people, even in the night. Lena goes to jail because she's noisy due to her drunkenness. Her husband, Johannes, fights after drinking. He calls himself J.P. Williamson and insults everyone. Dara likes to fight with his knife after drinking beer. One day, Johannes reports that he has seen him drunk and boastful. These are some examples of drunkenness in this novel. We cannot forget to say that even when Zuma arrives in the city at 3 o'clock, there are drunk people at Leah at that moment. Number 4, love. There is love in Mind Boy by Peter Abrahams. Even if it is not easy to explain it, one can say that it is love with paralysis. First of all, Zuma loves Eliza. Their love is likely to fade because Eliza loves educated people who read books. She's also a fan of white people. Even if sometimes they sleep together, their love fails and Eliza goes away. Second, Maze loves Zuma even though Zuma does not care. She helps Zuma in different ways. She cooks for him and tries to make him forget Eliza. Zuma and Mace dance together and one day they go at Hoop Play to enjoy themselves. When they come back, it is in the night. Mace makes Zuma sleep on her own bed and later she sleeps down on a mat. Finally, Zuma promises Mace to wait for him after the accident in the mines. Mace accompanies him and becomes glad that they will be married. Third, Paddy, Zuma's boss, loves black people even if he's white. Paddy believes that black people are human beings who are able. Once, Paddy asks Zuma for friendship. Even when Eliza goes away, Paddy reveals his sympathy and understanding to Zuma. Eventually, Ma Planck loves Daddy, even though he's always drunk. She cares for him. This is well shown when Daddy dies. Ma Planck becomes so shocked and shows that Daddy is important even when drunk. 5. Poverty. The theme of poverty is clear in the novel Mind Boy by Peter Abrahams. Zuma arrives in the city with poor living conditions. His shirt is torn, his trousers is tattered, he has no money. Reason why he comes in the city to look for a job. Leah lives in Daddy's home. She uses his house as both a living and a bar. There is no sufficient place to sleep on. Sometimes Daddy lies down on a mat. In Malay camp and Vredadolp, there are small houses where life is a mess. As everyone can see, black people live in poor conditions. When Zuma converses with Eliza, he says that at his home there are no schools. Black people and white people live in total different manners. Black people are poor, but white people are rich. When Zuma arrives at Paddy's home, he becomes surprised to see such a beautiful house. For Zuma, it is strange to understand that some people live in that luxurious conditions. Eventually, we record a mind boy who refuses to go to the doctor because he cannot afford to pay the bill. This man who suffers from tuberculosis accepts to go to the doctor after some time. This shows how poor black people are. Characters and characterization. Zuma. A Zuma is a man who comes from the north. He comes to look for a job in the city. When he arrives, he's received by Leah. Zuma is described as a strong man, but at the beginning of the novel, he is poor. When he gets a job in mines, he becomes a good mine boy. Paddy, his boss, makes him a boss boy. He falls in love with Eliza, but finally admits to love Mace when Eliza goes away. Leah. Leah is described as a strong woman whose husband is in jail after having killed the man who has tried to kiss his wife. She's beautiful. She has been raised by Daddy and Ma Plank. She sells illegal beer. She gives bribes to a black policeman who acts as her spy. Finally, she's caught by the fox and she goes to jail. C. Dradra. Dradra is a man who always plays with a knife. He betrays Leah to the police. He dies after some days. He is stabbed in the back. The one who kills him is not discovered. Ma Plank D. Ma Plank is the wife of Daddy, Francis Ndabura. She's an old woman who helps Leah in trade. She always prepares food for visitors. She's a she's a caring old woman. She's very shocked when Daddy dies. She becomes more anxious when Leah is taken to jail. E. Daddy. The true names of Daddy are Francis Ndabura. He is the husband of Ma Plank. He is the adoptive father of Leah. He's always drunk and likes fighting. He's knocked down by a car when he is crossing a road. Even though Dr. Minnie comes to help by and by, Daddy dies after the accident. F. Eliza. Eliza is a teacher. She's a woman who's in love with Zuma. Later, she becomes his wife. Eliza likes to live like white people. She's a dreamer of white people lifestyles. She loves Zuma, but eventually she takes a long train journey and does not return. G. Paddy. Paddy is Zuma's boss in the mines. He has a wife whose name is D. He loves Zuma and he acts as a sympathizer of black people. He does not like racial discrimination, racial segregation, or racism of many white people. Finally, he goes to jail after the accident in the mines. H. Chris is Johannes' boss in Malay camp. He dies in an accident that takes place in the mines. Johannes. Johannes is a mine boy who works for Chris. He's the husband of Lena. Sometimes he's sober, sometimes he's drunk. He's the one who takes Zuma in the mines to Malay camp. Finally, he dies in an accident that takes place in the mines. J. Elena, this is the wife of Johannes. We see her for the first time when she's fighting with drunk Liz. Once she's put in jail because she's drunk and noisy. She becomes released afterwards. K. D. This is the wife of Paddy. She hates all black people. She says that all black people are animals. She believes that black people cannot do anything without white people. She's a white woman with racial discrimination. Dr. Minnie. Dr. Minnie is a doctor who appears in several parts of the novel. He's the one who helps the man who has fallen from the roof. He helps Daddy after the accident. He's rich and lives like white people. Mace M. This is another lady who loves Zuma so much even if he does not care. She always cares for Zuma. Zuma loves her after Eliza's disappearance. He promises to marry her after returning from the jail. She accepts to wait for him. And drunk Liz. We first see her when she's fighting with Lena. Sometimes she helps Leah to sell illegal beer. She's big. Oh, Joseph. Joseph is the brother of Leah's husband. Joseph goes with Zuma to travel in the city. Joseph explains to Zuma the life in the city. P. The Fox. This is the policeman who catches Leah at last. He has been hunting for her a long time. Q. Emily. This is the black woman who works with Dr. Minnie. She acts as his nurse. She assists him to heal the man who has fallen from the roof. R. Nana is a mine boy who welcomes Zuma in the Mine Boys. He gives Zuma food to eat the first day he goes in Malay camp. There are other characters that we have not listed here. Thank you for being with us.